Hey everybody, Mark Victor here. Wanted to cut a video basically so I can explain what I'm up to here. Now, let me say right at the beginning, this video is going to make some people very upset. It's also going to make some other people very happy. I don't really care about any of that. I'm for freedom, and I'm for peace, and I'm for civility, and I'm not going to compromise my integrity for any purpose, period. So I've said from the very beginning that the reason I'm running for Senate really is to promote and get us in the direction of freedom and peace and civility. What I care about is the live and let live global peace movement. I've said from the beginning this is bigger than this Senate race. And I recognize the Senate race is really big because one party or the other is going to control the United States Senate. I get that. But it's not as big as the global peace movement. I think we need to unite the reasonable people of the world around a philosophy that we call live and let live. And to that end, I put out some videos, both to Mark Kelly and to Blake Masters, saying, look, if you guys want me to step down, here's how you make that happen. I offered two different ways. One way is to simply have a conversation with me that I was going to put some conditions on. For example, there would be no conversation before the conversation we would have, and it would be a public conversation that would be open for everybody to see. No negotiations behind the scene, no backroom deals, no secret agreements, none of that. I wanted everything to be 100% totally transparent. Well, so today I had a conversation with Blake Masters. He approached me, his campaign, and they said to my campaign, Blake would like to have a conversation with Mark. Fair enough. So today, by Zoom, we had that conversation. And look, I recognize that not everybody is going to agree on 100% of everything. Even people in the live and let live movement, there are always things for people to disagree on. But what I wanted to find out is Blake Masters really, as best I can tell, in his heart and in his mind, is he a live and let live guy? Is he really for freedom and peace and civility? Well, I ticked through many, many issues. We talked about lots of economic issues. We talked about lots of civil liberty issues. And while we don't see eye to eye on everything, I feel very confident after that conversation that Blake Masters is going to do everything he possibly can to further the interests of the live and let live global peace movement. Will he likely do some things that I'm not excited about? Yeah, I think so. Is he likely to do other things that I'm very happy with? Yes. There's no perfect choices here. We have to recognize that. But after that conversation, and you can judge for yourself because I'm going to give it to you right after this short sort of prelude to that, you can judge for yourself. My takeaway from that conversation is that this guy really is, in his heart and in his mind, he's in favor of doing everything he can to get us very sternly, very smartly in the direction of live and let live. And that seems like a good trade-off to me. It makes sense to me. I've said from the very beginning, I'm going to do what I think is in the best interests of peace and freedom. Who knows how it's going to work out? I don't know. I can't predict these things. And it is hard to tell in a short conversation exactly what's in somebody's hearts, in somebody's mind. But I have to make the best judgment with what I've got. And it's my judgment that it's in the interests of the live and let live global peace movement for me to step down with my campaign and urge people not to vote for me, not to vote for Mark Kelly, but to vote for Blake Masters. Because given where we are right now and given our options right now, Blake Masters is the best choice for United States Senate. So that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. That's right. Don't vote for Mark Victor for Senate. Vote for Blake Masters. Blake's in a very tight race here with Mark Kelly, and I want to see him win. Now, it's true. I've got the video here. He's made some statements on the video. I said I was going to do my best to hold him to it, and he welcomed that. So you judge for yourself based on the conversation that we had. I recognize people are going to be upset here. Some people will be happy. Feel free to email me. Maybe I got it right. Maybe I got it wrong. Time will tell. But of course, in my judgment, this is the best thing to do for the movement right now. I hope you agree. I hope you'll vote for Blake Masters. And let's give this guy a shot. Seems to me like he really is for peace and freedom and civility. So there it is. That's the reason I am pulling out of the campaign for United States Senate and putting my support behind Blake Masters. Thank you. Good. I understand we got 20 minutes and that's all we got, so I'm going to try to get right to it. First off, I really appreciate you having this conversation. I think the purpose of this conversation is I put out a few videos, really not just to you, but also to Mark Kelly, saying, hey, I'm interested in freedom and peace and civility. And if one of you guys wants to come talk to me and convince me that, hey, I'm the guy for freedom and peace, then I'm in. That's more important to me than anything else. And I understand we got 20 minutes. Also, I want to say to you, I think you're extending me some trust here by coming on. I mean, we're at the end stage of a campaign. There are lots of sort of gotcha things. That's not my purpose here today, and I appreciate you extending me some trust in that regard. What got this conversation going is I saw your interview with Ron Paul. And when you said in that interview that you actually read Murray Rothbard, and I think your dad maybe gave you a book or something, and Ludwig von Mises, I almost fell off of my chair. And I said, wait a second, maybe this guy really is for freedom and peace. I'm assuming you've read those guys. You like those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And
I was dragging Human Action around my senior year of high school. I'm pretty sure my friends thought I was nuts, but stuff's important, as you know.
That speaks volumes to me, because obviously we don't know each other. In fact, this is the first time we've spoken since the debate, right?
Yep.
And then, so we don't know each other. I'm trying to figure out in a short period of time what's in your heart, what's in your mind, what you're really about. So I guess I would start by saying, have you had any chance at all to go through some of what we're saying with the Live and Let Live global peace movement?
I have. Yeah, I looked at a few of your videos.
Any thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, I agree. I've been a long critic of U.S. interventionism and some of these, formerly forever wars. They dragged on forever. I think either the government lied to us about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, or they were so incompetent that it was just as good as a lie, right? But that war, what a mistake that was. I think the foreign policy blob in D.C., right, our State Department, they're always itching to intervene, right? Exporting democracy. Let's democratize the world. Let's make every country a satellite of America. And I don't think that works, and we need to reconsider almost everything, right? You and I agree about having a strong military. We want to actually keep America safe, but the goal is defense. The goal is not perpetual offense, which we've seen fail time and time again.
Totally agree. But the underlying philosophy, the idea that nobody should get to aggress against another person, no group, no corporation, no government, does that make sense to you as a legal principle?
Absolutely. The non-aggression principle, right? And I'm right there with you. And, I remember for this, it's right there in the Federalist Papers too, right? If men were angels, government would not be necessary, right? I think it was George Washington who said, government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. Government is force. Right. And we all need to remember what the government is. It is a territorial monopoly on the use of force. And I think force is bad. Like, aggression is bad, right? And I think the founding fathers, the design they came up with, said, hey, let's have a minimal government. Let's make it as small as possible. Let's strictly enumerate its powers. And that was the genius behind the Constitution. The problem is, of course, we've strayed so much from it that nobody basically follows it. And you gotta really restrain it, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And we got to be terrified of this.
And so rule number 2, which is our moral principle, be a good human, and the various aspirational values underlying that, all outside the law, but just trying to inspire people to get some more civility and open-mindedness and tolerance and that kind, building high levels of trust. I assume you're good with all that as well.
I'm not only good with that, but I echo and amplify. It is so important. I do think our political discourse has become toxic and polarized, so much so that you can't even have a conversation. It's like, remember Firing Line with William F. Buckley, right? He'd have Gore Vidal on, and you'd have the left versus right, or so-called, or whatever, debate, right? But we're losing that ability, and it's why free speech needs to just be a paramount value.
Love it.
It's not even a partisan thing.
So if you get in, can we count on you to be a live in, let live senator from Arizona to push those principles as much as you can? I recognize no two people agree on everything, and bills are filled with pork, and there's always going to be some good stuff and some bad stuff. But in terms of trying to get us in that direction, can we count on you to be in that direction?
Yes, directionally, that is where we go. And I will work hard and use my leverage to maximize the good stuff and minimize the bad stuff, right? I don't think you can just surrender to the system in advance and say, well, hey, this is how it works. I got to vote for this. No, I'm going to be telling people, hey, this pork is in this bill.
Yep.
And here's why I'm holding this bill up.
All right, so let me tick off some.
Works.
Because I know we got 20 minutes. I'd love to have 3 hours to sit down in the backyard and chew on some.
We'll do that after I win.
I love it, man. Okay, so let me tick off some issues right now. Economics. I think we agree here. Sound money, right? If we can get it back to a gold standard or something else. Does that make sense to you?
My dad always taught me you can't have an honest society if you don't have honest money.
Awesome. Reduce taxes, get as close as we can to eliminate them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
We're both for free market capitalism. Government spending way too much. We got to cut the spending, cut the debt.
I'll push a balanced budget amendment. I'm not sure we'll be able to pass it anytime soon, but I'll keep pushing it until we do.
But we got to be careful that they don't just raise taxes to get to the balanced budget, right? We got to.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It's not a one-stop solution, but it's halfway there.
Foreign policy. We're for peace, right? We don't want to get in. I think you said some things about this. We don't want to get involved in these nation-building type wars. Our military is for the defense of our nation. Agree?
Agree.
I'm curious real fast because I'm very worried about some of these existential threats. Artificial intelligence, synthetic bio, nukes or easy nukes. It's going to be easier for people to build these, maybe in their garage. Thoughts on any of this stuff? Will you work in that direction to try to get some agreement around the planet so we are not subject to these existential threats?
Yes, and those are all hard problems. And
they are.
You could speak for hours about each of them, but yes, I think especially we saw with the COVID stuff, right?
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
I think COVID came from that lab in the Chinese Wuhan Institute of Virology. And when you got people messing with this stuff, when it can just take out entire populations, I mean, thank goodness COVID wasn't literally 1,000 times more deadly.
Yes. And on COVID, government has no right shutting down private businesses. Agree?
No.
Government shouldn't.
That's a travesty.
A travesty.
And I think we'll look back on it as a crime. The federal vaccine mandate, I think we'll look back on it as a crime. The mask mandates for children, I mean, never.
Education.
Never.
Should we do everything to separate school and state as best we can?
Yeah, I guess starting with getting rid of the Federal Department of Education.
Love
I think
it.
It's unconstitutional, shouldn't exist.
And I agree with you. I saw on your website you are against federal funding of government loans. Let's let the private sector fund loans, not the government. We're agreement on that. Federal Reserve. This is an easy one. Audit it, if not eliminate it completely.
Absolutely. It's crazy that we let it exist without opening up its books to us fully. It's absolutely crazy.
I tried to agree with you in the debate, but I got cut off on energy independence. Nuclear energy is the future in terms of, yes. I think we both see, we want to be self-sufficient, Green New Deal, thanks but no thanks.
That's right.
Okay. Guns. Look, Americans have a right to keep and bear arms. If you are a competent adult, you don't have mental health issues, you don't have a violent felony past, and let's say you know how to use the thing in a way that you're safe with it, pretty much have whatever you want.
Shall not be infringed.
Okay.
I believe I'll be the most pro Second Amendment senator.
Right. But that doesn't mean everybody can have anything, right? I mean, there are some mental health issues. We don't want 8-year-olds having firearms.
That's right. Like you said, competent adult.
Competent adults. Okay. Immigration. I wasn't really clear on your position on immigration. I like the policies of late 1800s, early 1900s, welcome to America, but you don't get anything when you get here. So reduce the welfare state. At the same time, we let people who are not bad guys in. We both agree we got to secure the border. Are we in agreement on this or disagreement? I know there's some nuances around the edges.
I think mostly agreement. Look, I think illegal immigration, right? It's intolerable. It's the correct amount of zero. But we should welcome, we're a nation of immigrants, right? Right now, we take 1 million a year. The problem is right now it's kind of this random lottery system, right? And then it's tons of regulations and tons of costs associated with it, tons of welfare and benefits. And so it doesn't make sense. I would like to streamline it. I would like to welcome people to come here, especially people who've shown some track record in their home country, right? You built a business somewhere. hey, we should make it easier for you to build your second business in the United States, put Americans to work, right? We want to attract the world's best and the brightest and stop the Mexican drug cartels from selling people into slavery in our own country.
So as a conceptual matter, people who are productive, people who are coming here to work, they shouldn't get any benefits once they get here. But those are the people we want in here to build the economy, to help our country. The bad guys, people coming to violate rule number 1 and aggress, let's stop them as best we can and do our best to keep them out. I think we're on the same page there.
That's right.
Social Security. I've been seeing these commercials, and they're bothering me every time I see them because I think you're being treated unfairly. Every time I see Blake Masters talking about privatizing Social Security, and I see those senior citizens smirking, I want to defend you because here's the question. I don't think you want to cut seniors off of the benefits they are already entitled to. They paid in. Shouldn't they get what they paid in?
Absolutely, they should, and they will. And Mark Kelly knows he's not even stretching. He's just outright lying, right? No, seniors paid into this, and they deserve to have the government honor its promises, right? People built their lives around relying on these programs. Now, you know as well as I do that long term, hey, are my kids, they're 8, 6, and 2. Are they on track to get Social Security? No, there's some probably long-term funding issues. So I've proposed a new class of private retirement account. You can debate where the line should be, but say if you're under 30 years old, why don't we treat it as this awesome tax advantage savings vehicle? Let's let young people save. Don't tax the money on the way in. Don't tax the money on the way out. Let them build wealth over generations. Maybe by the time they're 65, they'll be so well off they don't need Social Security, and that shores up the system for the people who actually do, right? We should be willing to think about solutions like that.
Absolutely love it. Okay, let's get to some of the harder questions. Abortion. I don't know if there's how much daylight there is between us here. You say no taxpayer-funded abortions. Of course, I agree with that. There should be no taxpayer-funded anything, in my view. We're going to cut off money to Planned Parenthood. I totally agree with that. I think you and I would agree that this is a hard question, that there are reasonable, smart people on both sides of this question. So far, we're in agreement, right?
So far.
I think that you want to put the question back onto the state level, which is where it is at the moment. Is that a fair characterization of your position?
That's right. I thought Roe v. Wade was a bad decision. I'm glad that Dobbs overruled it. I think the hard question of how to regulate abortion, especially early on, should be thrown properly back to the state legislatures, right? It's mostly not a federal issue. I wonder if we agree on this, though. I have called for a federal backstop. I believe in states' rights. It's like absolutely this. Look, California is going to make a different decision than Arizona is going to make a different decision than Texas. And I think that's appropriate, again, especially early on, where people of good faith disagree about this issue. Now, I believe in a federal backstop because I don't think states' rights notwithstanding, I don't think California should allow Planned Parenthood to go in at 8 months and 30 days and sever spinal cords for no reason, right? I do believe that most people believe.
I think we're in agreement here. That's in what I would call the unreasonable range, right? But what I would say to that is, look, if you want to take that kid out at 8.5 months, if you could keep the kid alive, no problem. Let's give the kid up for abortion. So I think that does that make sense to you?
I think most people support reasonable limits, right? Yeah. And we should have a debate about like what those limits are. But what seems just true and good to me is the fact that there need to be limits. And that's why our opponent in this race, right, Mark Kelly, he really pushed a bill that would have prohibited states from exercising their own constitutional prerogative and putting some limits in place. I just don't believe in the no limits abortion regime. That's China and North Korea style, right? I think at a minimum, we should be more like every other civilized country.
Okay to have an abortion in the case of a rape?
Yes, I've come out in support of the exceptions, rape, incest, life of the mother.
Okay, awesome. I think that clarifies it. Separation of church and state. I say the government has no role here. Let's keep the government out of people's religion and keep people's religion out of the government. Whether you are a believer or a non-believer, you should have the same status in terms of the government. Does that make sense to you?
You've just articulated the First Amendment protections. I take them deadly seriously, right? And the First Amendment is supposed to be a shield against government encroachment on people's personal conscience. What the left is doing is they're trying to use it as a sword. They're trying to use it to come after people who just want to worship in peace. If you have a business and you don't want your, business-sponsored healthcare plan to subsidize birth control or abortion, I don't think the government should come and tell you that you have to provide that benefit to your employees, right? So I really care about religious liberty, and I want to protect that from any and all government interference.
Actually, could we go further there and say the government shouldn't interfere at all between the employer-employee contract? To the extent we can make that a private contract between employer and employee, that seems like the freedom position to me in all areas. We agree?
That's right. I think that's better for employers, and I think that's better for employees too, right? Like, let people get the benefit of their bargain.
Right. And so the issue, I think, just to linger on this for one moment, public property, right? The courthouse. Of course, I would like to devolve most public property down to private property. But if it's public property, we still want to keep religious displays out of public property, right? We don't want the 10 Commandments in the courtroom, right? Or do you disagree with me there?
I don't. Sorry, I'm getting some phone calls here. Oh, I think
You got other stuff to do? Is that what you're saying?
No,
a week before the election?
I think Katie Miller was trying to hop on and join us. Anyway, so let's see. 10 Commandments in the courthouse. That doesn't look. I don't think it should be there to the extent it is promulgating a religion or telling people that this is a religious code that you have to abide by. To the extent it is just obviously part of our tradition, part of our Judeo-Christian ethic. In the same way that I don't mind a Christmas tree next to a menorah in a public square, if that's what the locality wants to do. Here's what I'd say about that, though. These decisions are not federal issues. They're not even state issues so much as like, let each town decide, but it doesn't freak me out necessarily if a town decides in their local courthouse they want to have a
So either all religions are free to put up things or no religions are free to put up things. Either one of those two positions makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't think you could put up the 10 Commandments and then ban a menorah or something like that,
Fair.
Right? Like no locality should be able to privilege one religion in an official capacity over another.
Fair enough. Another hard question. I think that in this sort of spirit of freedom, competent adults, and I'm only talking about competent adults here, they decide what goes in or doesn't go into their own bodies for the same reason that during Corona, if people wanted to try ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, the government should not have told them no. But the same is true for bad things as well. So I guess question about marijuana. The people in Arizona have voted to legalize marijuana. Do you have thoughts on this issue?
I think marijuana is best handled at the state level. Absolutely. I mean, it's closer to, I don't think it's like a great thing to do personally, right? But that's my personal view. I'm not trying to push that on other people. I think marijuana is much closer to alcohol in terms of just what it is than, say, fentanyl, which I would draw a distinction, right? That stuff is poison. The tiniest amount will kill you. And so, yeah, you mentioned ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I think it's crazy, really crazy that the government at all levels, right, the feds and state governments and so many townships and municipalities basically banned it because the CDC didn't like it, even though I think it wound up saving a lot of lives.
All right.
And how many more lives could have been saved if that government didn't put their hand on the scale and tell people, get in the way between the doctor
people
and
should
the
decide.
Prescribing.
So can I get you to go so far as to say the federal government shouldn't be involved in running a federal drug war in any event? Can I get you to go that far?
Probably not, although I'd agree that the drug war as it's been fought hasn't worked. So we gotta learn from a lot of that, partly, going after low-level marijuana offenses. I think a lot of those resources that are counterproductive. I'd like to see more invested in treatment, more invested in education, right? I think a lot of people wouldn't mess with that crack pipe if they knew the trajectory that it might send to their lives, right?
No
So
question.
I bet we can agree about a lot of this.
Yep.
But I do think at a minimum, we got to keep, say, fentanyl away from coming into our country. Once it's in our country, it's really hard to deal with. But if we could just secure the border, maybe don't drive fentanyl down to zero. Maybe that's a pipe dream. But can we get 90% of this poison off of our streets and then deal with the 10% that's here with better treatment, stuff like that?
I got a few quick ones. I know we're running out of time. Gay marriage.
Yeah.
I know you believe a marriage is between a man and a woman. Some people believe otherwise. Can we say the government shouldn't have a role in marriage? And if people want to call themselves married, great. And if the Catholic Church says we don't recognize that marriage, both parties are fine. Does that position make sense to you?
I remember screaming this from the rooftops in 2008, right? I was saying, why is this a debate? Have a civil union and let people define marriage according to their religious tradition, right? I still think that makes a whole lot of sense. I regard the Supreme Court's decision here as settled law. I don't think anyone's going to try to overturn it. But again,
dignity in dying, competent adults, no problem with their competency, terminal illness. Do they have a right to decide the terms of their death or no?
I have a private religious view on this, and I feel very strongly about it, but I prefaced it by saying that's my private religious view, right? And I'm not trying to force that on anyone. Certainly, I don't think it's a federal issue, and I think states and localities can decide this, but I want to put as much power into the hands of individual people as possible.
Love it. Can I get you to say you support the Live and Let Live global peace movement?
I think so. Maybe I should see like the party platform, or to the extent
two rules. Don't be an aggressor. That's the legal rule. And then there's a moral rule. Be a good human. That's all we're saying. The rest of it is...
I'm on board for that, man.
Okay.
I'm on board for that. I support it.
I love it. The final things. You made a statement at the National Conservative Convention. You said libertarianism doesn't work. I don't know what you meant by that. And you said you wanted to coercive power of the state to impose conservative values. What did you mean by this? That made me a little nervous when I saw those comments.
Fair enough. It might be slightly taken out of context, but I also believe it, and so I'll explain. I probably identified as a libertarian for maybe 7 or 8 years there, probably late high school, all through college, into my early 20s. And I really do think it's correct in theory. Like everything you just said, like it's not good to aggress against other people, right? It's bad if I do it to you.
Yep.
That's called a tort. That's called a crime. It's bad if the government does it to us. That's why I said George Washington, government is not good. It's not reason. It's not eloquence. It's not some awesome thing. It is the state using power against people, right? Changing the way they make their decisions. That is in general bad. What I've learned, what I think is true, is you need some of that. You want it to be as small as possible. You want it to be contained. We have a constitutional design. It's why I think the Constitution, man, it's important, because as soon as you violate it, that's just a slippery slope to tyranny and authoritarianism, right? So I'm much more libertarian than I am, hey, let the government do whatever I want. I just think you need some, and where you need it, it needs to be strong. It needs to fight against this left-wing authoritarianism that we see. Otherwise, we just get crushed. It's like libertarianism is correct in theory, but if you just don't fight back, then the left, man, they'll be, we've seen in history where this gets us, right? It gets to death pits and concentration camps. And so we have to fight back against authoritarianism.
Totally.
Paradoxically, and it is a paradox, we need to elect people who understand it's a paradox. Paradoxically, you've got to use the government to make sure that left wing or right wing, but any kind of authoritarianism doesn't take root and doesn't destroy people's liberty.
It sounds to me like Blake Masters is trying to move the bus sternly, strongly in the direction of smaller government, free markets, more individual autonomy. I think that's clear from this conversation. I got to say, Blake, I wasn't planning to make a decision about endorsing you in this video, but you've won me over, man. I feel a lot better about you now, having had a short conversation with you. Look, this is going to be a video. If you go back on your word, I'm never going to let you forget it when you get to the Senate.
Hold me accountable, man. And I know people will. But they should. That's the way it's supposed to work. And I'll make good on what I'm saying.
I'm going to take you at your word, brother. You have my endorsement. I'm going to make a video to this, and I'm going to say, look, man, it was fun, but I've always been more interested in freedom and peace. I had a conversation with Blake. I think the guy, in his heart and in his mind, well, we disagree on some things. That's okay. If I get some more time with you, I'll get some agreement on that stuff, because I feel like I got enough that we could smooth out some of those rough edges. But I got enough here for me to say Blake Masters is going to be one of us in the U.S. Senate. We got to get him in. He's much better than Mark Kelly, which, by the way, standing offer to come talk to Mark Kelly. He hasn't taken me up on anything. I'd love to see how he ticks through some of these questions. But Blake, I feel good about you. I'm very happy, by the way, that you're taking your kids trick-or-treating tonight, because being a good dad is one of the most important things to me as a good dad as well. So I love that you're a good family man and you're being a good dad. Thanks for what you're doing. I know lots of what you've said has been taken out of context. Some of what I've said has been taken out of context. This isn't it's not a fun process, but dude, we need better people in the Senate. Thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I feel very confident we're going to have a very pro live and let live guy in the Senate. And I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to reach out to your campaign person, and I'm going to do what I can to do my best. I am at your disposal for the next week to try to get you in office.
Amazing. Thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for being in the arena. I know it's not easy, right? And Appreciate it, man.
We're both good Americans trying to get done what's right for our country. That's why we do these things. All right, thanks, brother.
Yep.
All right, peace,
All
man.
right.
I'm on your
Let's go
team.
win.
Peace.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right.